Welcome to Seductive Chronicles. In today's video, we step into a world where swirling autumn leaves carry whispers of connection, longing, and quiet emotional awakenings. This is a story about loyalty, vulnerability, and the invisible lines between emotional growth and temptation. One moment of conversation on a moonlit terrace would set into motion a profound shift, a journey of hearts tested, boundaries honored, and lives forever changed. The conversation that changed everything. I'll never forget the night it all began, perhaps because it started so quietly, so ordinarily. It was one of those crisp autumn evenings where the air carries both the chill of the season and something unspoken, something stirring. The wind danced through the trees, scattering golden leaves across the stone driveway like confetti from a celebration yet to happen. I stepped out onto the porch, smoothing down the fabric of my navy blue dress. It was simple yet elegant, fitted enough to feel confident, modest enough to remain comfortable. Behind me, my husband Brian locked the front door, his keys jingling as they settled into his coat pocket. He looked at me and smiled the way he always had when I dressed up, subtle pride in his eyes, quiet love behind it. "You sure this dress isn't too much?" I asked, half teasing, half nervous. Brian leaned in, sliding his arm around my waist. "Emma, you look perfect," he said without hesitation, "like you always do." We were headed to his boss's annual dinner party, something Richard Hamilton hosted every year to celebrate the company's wins. Casual, social, friendly. Brian had just been promoted, and while he insisted it was a relaxed affair, I couldn't shake the weight of the moment. It felt significant, as if tonight was more than just about wine and laughter. An evening of quiet shifts. Richard Hamilton's home was as grand as Brian had described, a sprawling estate that whispered elegance without screaming wealth. Warm lights glowed from tall windows, casting golden hues on the lawn and driveway. The door opened before we even knocked, and Richard himself greeted us with a smile that instantly put me at ease. "Emma," he said warmly, shaking Brian's hand before turning to me. "It's wonderful to finally meet you. Brian speaks so highly of you." There was something about the way he said it, gentle, sincere, and curious. He wasn't just being polite. He meant it. Inside, the house was everything I imagined and more, tasteful, warm, with candles flickering across tables lined with soft cheeses, grapes, wine, and arrangements of fresh flowers. Music played softly beneath the buzz of polite conversation and laughter. Richard, for all his professional stature, wasn't aloof. He was magnetic, effortlessly engaging guests, listening attentively, asking questions that seemed to dig deeper than expected. Several times, I caught his eyes lingering on me, not inappropriate, just observant, intrigued. Or perhaps I imagined it. Still, something about those glances stirred a quiet storm inside me, an unfamiliar tension, fragile but real. A conversation beneath moonlight after dinner, while Brian was deep in conversation with a few colleagues, I stepped outside onto the terrace. The cool air was calming, the scent of jasmine mingling with fallen leaves. I exhaled, letting my shoulders relax. "It's peaceful out here, isn't it?" a voice said softly behind me. I turned, startled, but relaxed instantly when I saw Richard. He wasn't smiling with charm now. He looked thoughtful. Human. "Beautiful," I murmured, glancing back toward the garden. "And your home, it's lovely." "Thank you," he said, stepping beside me, maintaining a respectful distance. Then after a moment, "Emma, if you don't mind me saying, you strike me as someone who prefers real conversations over small talk." That made me laugh, a soft, honest laugh. "You're not wrong." He was silent for a beat, watching the way the moonlight painted silver across the leaves. Then, gently, "Can I ask you something personal?" I nodded slowly. "You and Brian, you seem deeply connected. How do you maintain that, after so many years?" It wasn't a flirtation. It was genuine. Vulnerable, even. I hesitated, surprised by the question, but replied honestly. "It hasn't always been easy. We've worked hard to communicate. To listen, really listen. And to keep learning each other, even as we change." Richard turned to me, something soft in his expression. "That's rare." There was a silence between us, not awkward, just charged with the kind of weight that follows honesty. Then he said it. There's something I want to ask of you. And I need you to know, it's not inappropriate, and if you're uncomfortable, I'll never bring it up again. I blinked, caught off guard. Okay, he looked back toward the house, then to me again. You've clearly helped Brian become a stronger, more grounded man. You understand emotional intimacy, and I don't. I've always kept people at arm's length, even when I craved closeness. I think you could help me learn how to connect. Not temptation, but something else. I stood there in silence, surprised by the strange, powerful mix of emotions that welled in me. It wasn't flattery. It wasn't seduction. It was a plea. A man asking for understanding. Richard, I said slowly, your honesty means a great deal. I think we should talk more. Somewhere private. Later. His face lit up with quiet relief. Thank you, Emma. Truly. As we returned to the party, something between us had shifted, not romantic, not yet, but undeniably real. A new kind of bond. The following week, we met again, this time in Riverside Park, under trees heavy with the last of their golden leaves. The air was crisp, the river calm, and Richard was different. Quieter. Almost nervous. As we walked, he spoke of his past, his struggles with vulnerability, his fear that he'd never experience what real emotional connection felt like. In return, I shared my own fears, the early days with Brian, the walls I'd built, and the years it took to let them fall. And for every story I told, Richard listened, not just with his ears, but with his whole self. By the end of our walk, something unspoken had bloomed. Not love. Not lust. But intimacy. Trust. When emotions crossed the line a few weeks later, with Brian out of town for work, Richard messaged me, dinner. There's something I'd like to say, in person. I should have hesitated longer. I didn't. That evening, at a quiet restaurant tucked away from the city noise, Richard finally confessed what I think we both knew. I didn't expect this, Emma. But my feelings for you, they've grown. More than they should have. The words were soft. Painful. Honest. I looked at him, heart pounding. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't felt it too. But I love my husband. He nodded. I know. And I respect that. I just needed to be honest. We sat in silence, the air around us thick with restraint. Maybe, he said eventually, we should keep some distance, for now. Tears stung my eyes. Maybe you're right. And before we parted, beneath the soft glow of the street lamp outside, he gently touched my cheek with his lips, just once. Tender. Respectful. And yet, the most intimate moment I'd had in years. The letter. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived at my doorstep. Emma, you've helped me grow in ways I didn't know were possible. But I need time to understand myself, to let go. Know that you've changed my life. Not through love, but through truth. Always grateful, Richard I wept, not from regret, but from the beauty of his words. Of his respect. Of the strange, powerful friendship we'd built. Coming full circle, months passed. Seasons shifted. Then, one spring morning, Brian smiled across the breakfast table. Guess who reached out? Richard. He wants to have us over for dinner. My breath caught. How do you feel about that? Brian shrugged. I've missed him. Whatever you two shared, it helped him. I can see that. And so we went. Richard was calmer now. Softer. And when we spoke, it was different, more distant, more grounded, but filled with a quiet, lasting respect. As Brian stepped away to take a call, Richard looked at me one last time, voice barely above a whisper. You taught me something no one else ever has. To love, even if it means letting go. I smiled, a lump in my throat. You taught me something too. That connection doesn't always lead to romance. Sometimes, it leads to clarity. He nodded. and peace. The final moment later that night, as Brian held my hand on the drive home, he whispered, "Whatever you gave him, Emma, it changed him." I looked out at the stars, heart full. He changed me too. And in that moment, I realized, emotional connection isn't about desire or possession. It's about the courage to feel, the grace to let go, and the power to return to the ones who matter most, with a heart even more open than before. Thank you for watching Seductive Chronicles. If this story moved you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotionally rich journeys, where hearts are tested, but truths are always revealed.